All right, fourth graders, we are starting a new unit in social studies, focusing on our freedoms here in the United States, as well as immigration and why people were starting to come to our country. And so we've got lots of objectives for our unit for this week, and those are that we will be able to describe the process that immigrants went through to become American citizens during the early 1900s. We will also be able to recognize the cause and effects related to why immigrants left their homeland. And we will also be using primary and secondary sources and doing some close reads. So today our goal and our objective is that we will be able to describe the cause and effects related to why immigrants left their homelands. And we'll be doing some close reading to use some and find evidence to support those reasons. Before we start, I want you to think about immigration, and I want you to jot down a few thoughts and things that you know already about immigration or what you may have heard. And so we're going to read this little blip about, it gives us some more information. So people who come to live permanently in a new country are called immigrants. The process of moving to a new country is called immigration. Immigration happens around the world and not just in the United States. When someone moves from India to live and work in Spain, it is called immigration. When a family moves from Canada to live near relatives in Great Britain, it is called immigration. Immigration has happened for hundreds of years all around the world. People have been coming from around the world to live in America for hundreds of years. In the 1800s, immigrants from Europe began arriving in America in large numbers, and this wave of immigration continued until the 1920s. Why? Let's find out. So to hear more about the reasons people left their home country and came to a new country, we're going to watch this video. Before we do that, I want you to think about a time maybe you have had a friend that has had to move, or maybe you have even moved to a new home or a new place. And I'm sure there's so many feelings that we have when we're moving to a new place. And not only were these people leaving their home country, but many left their families and what they knew to go to a brand new place. So keep in mind as we watch this video, the feelings that these people are having. So let's go check it out.
Reasons for immigration and ship passage. You might be wondering, why were people leaving their home countries in large numbers from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s? Well, there were many different reasons. While some wanted adventure, dreamed of building a better life in the U.S., others were driven to the drastic action of leaving their homes because they were escaping horrible problems. For some immigrants, economic hardships, famine, and other natural disasters had made their lives in their homeland unbearable. For example, Ireland was struck with a potato famine in the mid-1840s. This led more than 1 million Irish people to immigrate to the United States. In the middle of the 19th century, political and economic unrest in Germany led large numbers of Germans to come to America as well. Some immigrants came to the U.S. because they were persecuted for their religious beliefs in their homeland. Jewish immigrants from Russia, for example, migrated to the U.S. after their homes and villages had been destroyed. These immigrants were hoping to escape hunger and find more fertile land and safety in a more stable country. So they made the decision to leave everything they knew and begin a new life in the United States. In fact, between 1880 and 1930, more than 27 million people made the courageous decision to leave their homes and families to make the journey to the United States. Many times, a family moved to the United States in stages. First, one relative, usually the father, would be the first to come to the U.S. He would work and save money until enough money was earned to secure passage for the rest of his family. Ships carrying immigrants to the United States from Europe had different levels of accommodations. Passengers paying for first or second class accommodations stayed in cabins on the upper decks. Most immigrants, however, could not afford first or second class passage. Instead, They bought tickets in steerage class. These tickets cost about $30 and were sold without space reservations. So ship companies made a great deal of money by packing many people into this lower level of the ship. Conditions in steerage class were miserable. Passengers were faced with rows of bunk beds in the part of the ship that felt the most motion. This area was dark and musty with no fresh air. It was very crowded and often smelled horrible. Often steerage passengers became sick because of the unsanitary conditions. The 10-day trip across the Atlantic must have seemed much longer for these immigrants. Let's review what we have learned about what led people to seek a new life in the United States. Question 1. In the mid-1840s, a potato famine in what country caused many of its citizens to migrate to the United States? A. England. B. Ireland. C. France. D. Italy. If you answered B, you know that a potato famine in Ireland led many people to migrate to the United States. Question 2. What led some Jewish immigrants to leave Russia in the 1800s? A. There was a severe lack of food. B. They were persecuted because of their religious beliefs. C. Severe weather conditions made it difficult to live in Russia. D. There were no educational opportunities in Russia. The correct answer is B. Some Jewish people left Russia because they faced religious persecution. Question 3. How long was the average steamship trip from Europe to New York? A. The trip took about 3 days. B. The trip took about 5 days. C. The trip took about 10 days. D. The trip took about 15 days. If you answered C, you know that the steamship trip from Europe to New York took about 10 days.
So that video gave us some good reasons on why immigrants decided to leave their home country and come to America. We're going to read and find out a few more reasons, and just remember that this was a big decision for families, and they wanted what was best for their family and the future of their children. And so we're going to keep reading about those push and pull factors. So why America? People move from their home countries for many reasons. We can think about these reasons in two ways. Sometimes there are factors that make people want to leave their home country. These are called push factors. These are conditions that push people away and make them want to leave. For example, in the early 1900s, people in some countries faced cruel or unfair treatment because of their religion. Many small farmers were out of work. Crowded living conditions caused some to want to leave. Others wanted to leave because they did not want to be forced to serve in their country's military. The idea of escaping these difficulties in their home countries was pushing many people to leave. Pull factors are conditions that pull people to a new country. For example, in the early 1900s, people in Europe were hearing about inexpensive farmland in America. They heard of higher wages and plentiful job opportunities. There were many new factories being built in America, and those factories needed workers. They knew that America was the home of the free, where they could practice their religion without fear of the government telling them they couldn't. The idea of a better life was pulling many Europeans to America. So, when you think about why people would want to leave, there were those reasons that pushed them out. Those were some negative things, the things that they wanted to get away from. And then there were things that kept pulling them in. They were attracting them about America, that they wanted to be there. Those were things like having farmland or having the freedom to have their religion. So there were a lot of different factors that people considered before they left. So now it's your turn to do some practice and to be able to read closely and think back to those reasons why people were pushed out of their home and what was pulling them to this new place. And so you are going to open up this assignment called Push Factors and Pull Factors, and you will find this page. You will then be able to click on a box and drag it to where it belongs. If it was one of those things pushing them away or pulling them to America. So for example, if we look at this sentence, there are high wages in America. Do you think that was pushing them away from their home, or was that pulling them to the new place? So you would be able to click on this and you're going to drag it right up here to a pull factor. That's something positive about America that's pulling them in. So go ahead and find this on your Synergy, on your student view, and go ahead and do that assignment. And tomorrow in our social studies, we are going to be learning more reasons about immigration and what that looked like once they did decide to leave their home country.